you're married and you can be, you have a normal life and then you go and have sex with other people. Like, that sounds great to me. We wrote eroticas to each other back and forth, pretending to be in these situations, and we were swinging. Like, BDSM is appealing because it's very monogamous. You can just do that with one other partner, and you're not really opening your relationship to other people. So I think that's why it's easier for people to like digest and be interested in, because it's like, meeting anyone who's interested in being in an open relationship, a poly relationship, or a swinger lifestyle relationship. I could be submissive and you just tell me everything and what we're gonna do in this bed, or I tell you what I want and then you make it happen. Like, there's negotiation and talk, and with like no repeats. Like, we only wanted to hook up with someone like one time. It'd be like a one night stand. We didn't want to risk like catching feelings. Have you ever heard of swinging? Is that something that you might be interested in? Because
there's obviously cases where that's not the case. People just go buck wild and jump head first. But
a lot of times when I talk to people and I say, are you interested in an open relationship, poly relationship, or a swinger lifestyle relationship? And either like, I don't know, or all the above, or like, what's the difference?
All right, well, thank you so much, Victoria and Ryan, for being here. If you want, you can just kick off by introducing yourselves. I'm pretty sure we know who's Victoria and who's Ryan, but
Sure.
If you guys want to introduce yourself, tell me a little bit about you, your upbringing, what led you to join the military, kind of start from there.
Yeah, sure. So I am originally from Arizona, currently living near Chicago, and I joined the military right after high school. And pretty much my journey started being motivated through my mom, because my grandpa was in the military. He was a Navy chemist at the time. And my grandpa always told my mom to like join the military or else you'll regret it. And my mom's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, later on in life, she did regret it. And she always like kind of instilled that in me growing up, that like, you should join the military. And initially she wanted me to go in as an officer or join the reserves. But then I changed my mind. I was like, no, I want my education paid for in full. So I'm going to switch and become active duty. So kind of like one of the main reasons I joined the military was because I wanted to get my education paid for with the GI Bill benefits that they had. And that's what really was my motivating factor for the military. And so I joined, I joined as an ABF, and that was in October 2014, and lived in San Diego, lived in Japan, and then lived back in San Diego. And that's when I became a civilian. And then that's when we started our business, which we'll get into later. But that's kind of a little bit about the backstory of my military career.
And Ryan, you're a vet too,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Say that again?
You're a vet too, right?
I am, yeah. So I was in the Marine Corps for 10 years. I didn't join until I was 21. I went to college for probably 3 years, and I switched majors pretty much every year. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And at a certain point, I was like, you know what? I need to do something different. So I decided to join the military. I joined as a communications specialist. So I did radio stuff, and then I changed jobs, lat moved, or what is what it's called, into being a linguist. And then I got put on a B billet, which is like a job that they give you in the military. You don't really choose it, but you have to do it. And I was part of a FAST company, which is essentially embassy reinforcement. So that was my pretty much
Where did
my
you
military
join
career.
out of? Like, where are you originally from?
Oh, so I joined out of Chicago. And I went to boot camp in San Diego, and then I was in Southern California for 3 years, and I moved up to Northern California for about a year, training there, then to Texas, then North Carolina, then Virginia, and yeah.
Oh, you bounced
Not
all over.
including any deployments. That's all just
We also
bases
lived
that I
in
was in.
Japan.
Oh yeah, Japan was a deployment for me. So she lived in Japan, like stationed there, and it was a deployment for me.
Yeah, but he
twice.
deployed there for a year, so might as well say you lived there.
Oh,
So-
yeah, that's a sweet gig, yeah.
Yeah.
What language were you a linguist
Spanish.
for? Spanish.
Spanish,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay, I've never met a Spanish linguist. They're always like Farsi or Urdu. Or...
Yeah, no. I chose what I thought was going to be the easiest thing, to be honest. I wanted to change my jobs. I wanted a good bonus, and they had it in both. So yeah.
Yeah, when I was
Impractical.
when I was deployed in South America, we had a linguist, and I thought he was Spanish speaking, but it was actually Portuguese.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Yeah, I was with the 13th MEU.
Okay.
I went
Yeah,
down
yeah.
there. Yeah, but
That sounds
no, that's
fun.
pretty awesome. So, how did you guys meet? Was it in the
We met in
military?
Japan. Yeah,
We
we
met
met in
in
Japan.
Japan when we were in the
A house
military.
party.
Yes. I I forgot how I got invited to this little house party, but I went there with a couple of friends and
And then she tried leaving without
yeah, and
talking.
I was talking to everyone else there, and while I was there, his friends invited me to go Mario karting with them on the streets of Tokyo, and I was like, yes, of course. And so, we chatted for a little bit, and then I actually had to leave. And as I was leaving, that's when I met Ryan, and then he's like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm leaving."
I don't think I sounded like that, but I'm probably more like,
But
"Hey, where are you going?"
but
Yeah.
yeah, but then
The
he got
Rico Suave,
yeah,
like,
yeah, very, very smooth. At least in my head, it was really smooth and really great and awesome. So,
And then we met like a couple days after that, and at the Hanch, which is like a mile long street of bars right outside the naval base in Yokosuka, Japan. And we hit it off right away. And then after that, like I think like the next day is when we went Mario
yeah,
karting, and I was Peach and he was Mario, even though we had only known each other for like a few days, and we've just been hanging out ever
yeah,
since.
she can't get rid of
no.
me.
So what happened after? So did you leave Japan first?
Yeah, so you in FAST, well, I don't know how it is now, but when I was in FAST, you got deployed to Japan for about 6 months, and then you would go home essentially. I got orders again. Well, I kind of tried to finagle the orders and went back to Japan for another 6-ish months, and then yeah, so I was there for just about a year. So
Oh, wow. So did you guys do the long distance thing while you guys were
yeah,
separated?
yeah. So for about I'd say 6 months, we were long distance and
Hmm.
doing all that
Yeah.
jazz. So
And actually, our meet-versary
oh yeah, we just
is either today or tomorrow. I thought I read it in my calendar,
Oh,
but I didn't. But yeah, so we've met in 2016 in February.
yeah.
oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
it's been a minute.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, okay, so you guys, so did you both get out at the same time? I know that you were in
No,
for longer.
yeah. So I got out. So I got out in 2017, and then she got out in 2019. Was it? Yeah,
2019,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. So
And
then, yeah.
how our where our living situation transitioned was we were in Japan together at the same time, and then we moved to San Diego in August 2017.
Yeah,
And then that's
Oh.
when we lived in San Diego. Yeah,
San Diego
and
for
that's when he got out, and then I got out a couple of years later, and yeah.
Yeah. Logistically, I'm sure it was all over the place. We all know how dual military relationships are. And I mean, I
yeah,
have
Yeah.
friends that they're like one's in the army or one's in the navy and trying to
yeah.
coordinate living situations and
Yeah.
getting co-located and
Yeah,
Well,
it wasn't too bad because I was out at the time, so I'd just gotten out, and then she had gotten orders maybe like a month or a couple months beforehand. So I just essentially went over there to live with her.
so you were the
yeah.
dependa?
I was
You,
the dependent. Yep.
He
Yeah,
was.
I
That,
that's
was
awesome.
being dependent, going to school, doing
but it
all
really
those
panned
things.
out
Yeah, so
because
it did work out well.
while he was my dependa, he got he finished his degree in cybersecurity and
Yeah,
went through the SANS Institute and got certified and pretty much had a very, very smooth transition from military to
yeah,
civilian
no,
life.
yeah. It was pretty easy. So I mean, for me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I SANS is awesome. If anybody knows the SANS Institute for
Hmm.
Cybersecurity, they're really
The
really
Vet
setting the
Success
bar.
Program.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's I just about 4 years ago I was thrown into cybersecurity, not
yeah,
willingly. Just I work in security and
yeah,
everything's going online and into the cloud, and you kind of like are forced to have to. I don't envy
yeah,
you, but I appreciate you. I appreciate anybody who goes into that world.
yeah.
So tell me tell me a little bit about your business and how that came about.
Yes. So my business is called Birds of Feather Matchmaking. It's a boutique matchmaking firm specializing in ethically non-monogamous relationships, meaning anyone who's interested in being in an open relationship, a poly relationship, or a swinger lifestyle relationship. And this stemmed mainly from personal experience and passion and wanting to start my own business. The idea of matchmaking came to me when we were honeymooning.
Yeah, this was the impetus for it. It's just she saw a post on Facebook.
Oh yes, I saw a post on Facebook about a matchmaker looking for singles for her clients, like a screenshot that was going around the girl groups, and I thought like, well, that would be amazing. It'd bring more love into the world. It could be hybrid. So and it was like the way the timing was like I just finished my MBA. I wanted to start my business, didn't know what I wanted to do yet, and I'm like, let me look into this a little bit more because my Ryan and I have been non-monogamous for a majority of our relationship, and so I wanted to see if there was other matchmakers doing it because I figured like I would want to be a part of the niche that I am so people can resonate with me more and I can help that particular group of people. And turns out there was no matchmakers doing it. So I became the first certified matchmaker specializing in ethically non-monogamous relationships, E.N.M for short. So if I say E.N.M, that's what that means.
Yeah.
Um, and before I got certified officially, I was communicating with a handful of other matchmakers and just asking them questions. And whenever I told them like what I was planning on doing, they're like, "We need someone like you. There's no one else doing it." And then answered any questions that I had. So it was great. And yeah, I started that business in February 2023, and now I do matchmaking, and together we do date coaching for men. And I also host a lot of social events, like speed dating events for those who are non-monogamous, for individuals or couples, and social events. So sometimes it might be just like an all-girl event, like a Galentine's party that I'm throwing soon, or just a regular social event, like on the rooftop. I've hosted like a rooftop brunch. So just things to bring the community together in a fun and low pressure casual environment.
Yeah, so tell me how that worked. And again, being completely new to this concept, so when you guys had first established your non-monogamous relationship, now I'm totally
Mhm.
going off of like movies here, but like, did you
Okay.
set up like ground rules? Like, were there like boundaries? How does that work? And how did you guys make it work prior to the business starting?
Yeah, so there were ground rules, which
And you don't have to tell me what
Well,
the ground
yeah, yeah, no, no.
rules
It's
were,
just
but like
it's kind of funny because in the very beginning,
You
when
graduate.
you're first jumping into this, you're like so nervous and so scared about everything. You're like, oh my God, this is gonna happen, and this, like all the stereotypes. You're like, oh, this is gonna ruin this. If we do this, this is gonna be wrong. And I'm intentionally not giving examples of
We can
like
give one.
all the things that were going on
We
in
can
our
okay. We can
heads,
give one example
because
of one that we had,
oh
which was a boundary or a rule or an agreement, whichever you kind of call it. And actually, differentiating between the three is kind of like a skill in itself because they all sound
yeah,
similar, but they're all a little bit different. But like for example, one rule that we had was like no repeats. Like we only wanted to hook up with someone like one time. It'd be like a one night stand. We didn't want to risk like catching feelings. And then we realized so quickly, like, that is just not the case. That's definitely not what happens because you want to make friends with these people. And then then that's when you might have repeat experiences with your really good friends. And so that particular
yeah.
rule, we graduated from that very soon, very quickly.
sure,
Honestly,
yeah,
we
But
didn't really, honestly, I don't think we had too many
so the way our
ground
journey
rules,
started
really. Yeah.
was we don't remember the initial conversation, but I think it was me who asked him, he's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of swinging? Is that something that you might be interested in?" Because I had learned about swinging from an early age when I was in high school. And I always thought that was like amazing. Like you're married and you can be, you have a normal life and then you go and have sex with other people. Like that sounds great to me. So I always
yeah.
had that in the back of my mind. And so when I told Ryan about that, he immediately was like, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea
That
to
sounds
me
great.
too." Yeah, literally. And so we're like,
Yeah,
"Okay, cool." So what we did when we were long distance for 6 months, we wrote eroticas to each other back and forth, pretending to be in
And
these
different
situations, and we were
situations.
swinging. Like one 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 of them was like we were out for a picnic and we saw another couple and we just sparked up conversation, like some really cheesy stuff like that. But like we were totally into it. It was a
yeah,
great way to pass time for me on deployment,
yeah,
you know, because we were doing different perspectives. Like it was like his point of view, my point of view, and we were like going back and forth.
Mhm.
yeah.
So that's kind of like what inspired us more to like continue our journey. And then when we moved to San Diego, that's where we really launched our lifestyle journey. First, we went to a poly meetup, and then we went to a Riptide Shibari meetup through FetLife events. And then we
Hmm.
met swingers, and we're like, oh, yeah, these are our people. And then ever since
Nice.
then, that's pretty much where we devote a lot of our time and hobby to.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
So, if you
No,
would
that's
call it a
really
hobby, but.
interesting because I think it's almost like you guys eased into it. And
Mhm.
having been a confidant for a lot of my friends who tell me a lot of like what their dynamic is with their relationships, it seems like that's a pretty normal start, I think, right?
yeah,
Um,
I would say and
So I think the most normal start is when there's a couple and the woman is bi-curious.
yeah,
And so
that
she is interested in having experiences with other women. And they're like, okay, so how can we have these experiences with other women? And so that's why they look for threesomes or they look for what's called a unicorn, which is a bisexual woman who plays with couples. And but once they start trying to reach into this community and this lifestyle, they realize, oh, there's a lot of couples who are really cool. And then they might dive into becoming a swinging couple rather than just having threesomes with
yeah.
another woman.
But yeah, you're right. It is a very I would say for the most part it's gradual. I mean, there's obviously cases where that's not the case. People just go buck wild and jump
Yeah.
head first, but
Yeah.
but that
And I think
yeah.
that's where having guidance really helps, right? I think having a company like yours to kind of guide that
Yes.
experience and ease them into it where it's not damaging, right? It's a mutually
Yeah.
beneficial sort of like concept. I remember, Victoria, I was telling you, I live in a suburb in California with a lot of swingers, and I did not know that. I had to learn the concept of this like upside down pineapple thing, which was this
Mm-hmm.
running joke amongst the entire community that I was not aware of. And I was in Costco and someone like slapped one of these like upside down pineapple stickers on the back of my car. It took me 2 days to steam it off.
Gotcha. Oh my God.
And I was
Oh
like,
no.
oh, this is a
Oh
thing. Yeah, that's how I learned about it. And then, like, shortly after that happened is when I got in touch with you on the veterans page and you explained to me a little bit more about it. And I was like, oh, shit, this is a thing. Like, this is pretty cool. All right.
Oh,
Like,
I like solidified it for you like that.
yeah, yeah.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
I
It's
mean, I
alive
was
and well.
familiar. Yeah, I mean, there's like bars in New York that are exclusively, that's where I'm from, exclusively for swingers. And then
Mhm.
it even gets more specific where it's like 40 and up or,
Yep. Yeah.
certain age groups because that's just what they prefer. And it's a safe place for
Hmm.
them to go and meet up
Hmm.
with other people. So it's interesting. So, okay, so you guys tried this firsthand. You kind of get a hold of some folks on Facebook. You understand that other people are looking to do this. So, how does it work, right? So, if let's say I'm that wife, and I'm like, you know what, I kind of want to try this. I see your birds of a feather, and I'm like, let me hit them up and see how they can help me and my husband. How does that work?
Like I said, there's a couple different ways, right? So the
Sure.
is if this person has done nothing at all, like we have a
Yeah.
little activity that is called like opening your relationship, or are you a good fit for opening your relationship?
No, it's
Something
called,
along
yeah, opening your relationship.
yeah. So it's a little
Okay.
activity with questions and essentially, hey, it's a checklist, like a think like a bingo card, right? Like
Sure.
and there's different things on each one. So there's stuff about open relationship, there's stuff about swinging, polyamory, and
And things that lean like kinky that
oh
you can
yeah,
just do
kinky.
by yourself.
Yep.
So yeah, it's like how to have the conversation, and then it's a communication tool. And that's kind of what Ryan and I did in the beginning of our relationship. We're like, okay, let's just try to look up what we might be into, and then we'll come back together and talk about it, and then we'll try to
Yeah.
do something
And
about it.
so how the process goes is you'll each get a sheet of paper, right? And you'll kind of fill out like, oh, this sounds interesting to me. Okay, this sounds interesting. Like
Yes,
just checking the
it's
box.
called yes, no, or maybe.
Yeah. And then afterwards, after you both fill out the both partners fill out the sheet, come back together and discuss it and say, okay, hey, I like this, and this, and you like that, this and that.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. You see where there's alignment, you see where there's like room for improvement, and then you can see like what might be like a hard no at the time.
Yeah.
And something that I also tell people is like just be open to change. It's like very scary at first, but you learn so much about yourself
Mhm.
when you have a dynamic like this for sure. And then you're going to events and you're meeting other people and just kind of growing from there. But
That's
um
that's the first step I would say. If they're brand new,
yeah.
just have the talk with your partner because there's no point to go to a place or pay for something if you like literally haven't had a conversation. You literally don't know anything about it at all, and you're just like, okay, let's do this. But the first step, talk to your partner. Second step, figure out what you like,
Yeah.
right?
So typically with my business, I do have a lot of new people that come out to me and I feel very resourceful for new people especially too. Um, but with my business, it's like the helping other couples isn't particularly like the main part of my business. It's mainly those who are single who want to have an open relationship. So with the couples who are interested in being a part of my database or being like this, I will take them as a client as a case by case basis because I don't match for play partners. It's more like something that's like long term.
Mhm.
And yeah, if they're brand new, I ask them like what they're curious about and answer any questions that they might have, and I just do that like
Yeah, she
if it's a few questions.
she does consultation calls just to
Yes,
see
I do.
with every potential client or anybody that does a consultation call, she finds out what they want, what what is really important to them, and then going from there, right?
Yeah.
So
And the best experience is going out and trying it for yourself because a lot of times what happens is that people are like, oh, I'm interested in swinging, but they actually might be like, I'm actually more interested in like the BDSM, like having a Dom sub relationship, or I'm more interested in being polyamorous and having multiple relationships. So once you start diving in, you have to have regular check-ins with your partner. You have to not hold anything back because then resentment starts to build, and that's when there's like a downfall of the relationship when it could just be a conversation and
so first step, conversation. I guess
Yeah.
that's the long-winded answer
No,
for
no, I
that.
mean that's really good. How do you I have a question about the single aspect, but how do
Sure.
you recommend, so let's say I'm a husband and I want to bring this up to my
Hmm.
wife and like, but I don't want my wife to think that I'm just trying to like bone other people. How do you
Hmm.
recommend facilitating that conversation with your spouse if that's the route you're looking to take?
So there's a bunch of different ways to do this, and it's going to be case by case depending. Because something I recommend for somebody isn't going to go over well with somebody else.
Right.
I guess one strategy would be to just kind of hint at something like this in the bedroom, like say, "Hey, wouldn't it be hot if blah?" Like there was another
Hmm.
person here with us. That might go over great with some people. Might you might burn and crash for other
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
right? Like
I think if you're interested in this relationship dynamic, come from it like when everyone's in a good mood, everyone's in good spirits. So the main thing that is crucial is that this relationship dynamic is not good if your relationship is rocky.
so yeah,
This is you have to make sure that your relationship is solid the way it is, like
I
to
say
begin with.
it's it's
Right.
kind of like having a kid. It's not going to fix anything. It's only going to make things worse if
Yeah.
you have a bad relationship. Like if you have a good
Yeah.
relationship, kid's going to make your could make your relationship
Yeah.
worse, but generally it's going to make your relationship better,
Yeah.
right? Like you're raising this child that you love and everything. But if you have a bad relationship and we're fighting constantly, that's just
Or there's
the
no
child is going to
trust,
do
there's
nothing
no
but
Yeah.
communication.
add
It's pretty
extra
much just going to
stress.
expedite
Yeah.
what needs to happen, which sometimes ends up into a breakup, and people kind
Yeah.
of go from
So
there. So
another example of something good would be to use that checklist that we talked about earlier and say, "Hey, I will have a fun
Yeah.
game I want to play with us." We don't have to take it
Yeah.
seriously, but like, what I want to know more about your your fantasies, your kinks, things of that nature,
yes,
and just go from
talking
there.
about resources that you found, talking about like, hey, what do you think about this, or what do you think of this video? What do you think of this docu-series?
Yep.
Hmm.
There's a couple good documents or docu-series that I recommend to people. Two of them actually now. There's a series on Netflix called Explained, which has kind of like short segments about that's very like hyper focused on certain subjects, and one of them's called Non-Monogamy.
Is it monogamy or not monogamy? What either way, it's
Okay, it might be monogamy or non-monogamy, but
I'll
basically it
I'll
talks about how
find it and I'll
humans
leave a
are
link. Yeah.
terrible about being non-monogamous.
or being
Yeah.
monogamous. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the new one that we found is called You Can't Ask That, which is about marginalized groups in Australia. And there's a episode about swingers and an episode about polyamory. So,
And kink, yes,
and
BDSM stuff.
yeah, and some BDSM stuff too. So,
Those are all interesting, and honestly, the you can't ask that one on Swingers was pretty spot on with their
yeah,
answers and like how they were responding to things. So that's a good place to start as well. Just kind of to learn more about it, right?
yeah,
Like you just if you don't know something, you don't know,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah, so make sure there's
Yeah.
lots of love in your relationship. Make sure that there's already some good communication. And
tons of
hopefully
communication.
you're with a partner who's non-judgmental, who's open-minded, who is experimentative. Like hopefully you picked the right person. Like if this is something that you're really
Yeah.
interested in, like
Yeah,
eh, the part that is crucial as well is having support too.
mhm.
So a lot of women are like, are you sure? Like, because societal norms are like women should be this perfect pure being and they have a certain role and they are not look the same as men when it comes to their sexuality. Like men can have an abundance and women cannot. And so when someone has been traditional and been monogamous, um,
It's difficult to convince them of something else that
Right.
exists that would be feasible
it's pretty
long
much just a
term.
lot of reassurance too that's required in this kind of relationship. Like, are you sure? And it's like, yeah, that'd be really hot. And of course, you want it. Like, you want to be happy. You want to make your partner happy. Let's try it out. I always tell people just give it a try,
Yeah,
and see how you feel, and take it away from there.
hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, no, it does. I mean, in a
There's a few
roundabout
different
way,
ways you
it's
can have the
just,
conversation. Yeah,
yeah, it's like you need to have the conversation for sure, but also maybe
Mhm.
a little self-reflection and looking at your relationship from the outside in and understanding if you
hmm
have those lines of communication and that trust. No, I think
yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
good.
And I would even
So
say like a good way to just even start would be to get like a sex toy together. Like go start getting into that space. Like do kinky stuff between the two of you, and then just keep taking it up a notch. So it's like okay,
yeah,
we role played.
Mhm.
Now
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
make it real life. So I
so
think going and getting sex toys together is a start as well
so
to launching this.
funny story about that. So I was sending a care package to my friend who was deployed overseas, and
Oh,
like never give me your address because you're gonna get a box full of like just stupid shit, right?
Yep.
So
Of
I'm at
course.
this
we
like
love it.
I'm at this like sex shop, and I'm like, give me the weirdest shit you have. Like I was telling the
Oh
lady
my
there,
gosh.
because
Like,
it's
all right, I
always a
gotta go to the
guy.
back room for this.
Yeah, I was like, this is for a guy friend, and I even like I had like little like penis confetti. So like whenever they
Yes.
opened the box,
Oh
just as like
gosh.
dick
Yes.
confetti was gonna go everywhere.
Yes.
So I was
Oh
like,
my
so he gets like the
God.
weirdest thing for
That's
me. But
amazing.
while I'm there, they're like, oh yeah, there's like a little back room, right? And I was like, yes, let's
I
go.
knew it.
Yeah, so I go into this like back room. So there's like aisles, and there's just one little door that leads into this room that has like the real crazy stuff. So I'm back there, and there's this cutest, like the cutest couple that's there, like just so like chiseled out of stone, picture perfect. And the guy's like, Janet, should we? How do you think of this? And it's just like this giant dildo. And I'm like, yo, you guys are
Yeah.
awesome. I'm talking about like khaki shorts, like socks pulled all the way up. Like I'm pretty sure this guy goes to my church. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, this is
Yeah.
awesome, but
Impressive.
yeah, I mean, and it's you wouldn't think that they're there, but you're also like they're a pretty solid, happy couple, and they're just doing what makes them happy, so no judgment.
Yeah.
So
I will
no,
say
that's
that it is more prevalent than you'd think, like
oh
being
yeah,
in some sort of non-monogamous relationship. There's a,
Yes.
it's a subset of the population, just like, 5-10%
It
of,
can
I
be
don't know what
servers, it
percentage
can
it
be
is, but
CEOs, it can be surgeons, it can be teachers, and it can be those in the medical field.
yeah,
So,
anywhere.
yeah,
Yeah. So,
yeah,
yeah.
but
you
I
never know until you know.
yeah, I've always seen it from like a cultural aspect. I have a lot of friends who come from like more of a poly, like that's their culture. They're
mhm.
from all over the world, and that's just like their thing. And I never really thought anything about it. Again, this is I did a lot of research before coming into this episode to kind of see what was out there, and I'm like, oh, this is like a thing. This is not like
Yeah,
a
Yeah,
one-off. This is like a actual sub
a
base, like you're saying.
lifestyle, if you will.
Yeah, it's definitely a
and
lifestyle.
yeah, and I would say that non-monogamy is even more prevalent. Everybody
Mm,
knows somebody that's been cheated on. Either you've cheated on somebody, you've been cheated on, or you know somebody that's been cheated on. So
yeah,
we're just putting the ethical part in there where everything is discussed and consensual and ethical beforehand. So
yes.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's also really important, right? That eliminates all of the stereotypical like stuff that's out there about it not being a good thing or it being
yeah,
difficult. It's like, well, because you weren't honest about it. And that
yeah,
goes
no,
for
exactly.
anything in life, right? If you're not honest
Yep.
about anything, it's going to backfire.
Yep,
So,
Hmm.
yep, and I should, cheating does happen. I don't know why, and it doesn't make any sense to me, but it does happen too. Very much less frequently, I would say, but yeah. So
In the swinger
yeah.
lifestyle is what you're
yeah,
referring to.
yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's go back to what you said where you primarily work with single individuals who are looking to explore this lifestyle. Is it men and women that you guys take on
Yes.
as clients? Okay, so how does that
Yes.
process work?
Yes, so the process, how that pretty much starts out is I have a dating database, which is free to be a part of. And I have an application and it's on my website, birdsofeathermatchmaking.com. And on that application, it's just like a few questions. And then I get notified that you joined my dating database. I look into it. And then what I do next is I get in touch with the person who has expressed in the application that they're interested in matchmaking services, and I set up a Zoom call. And pretty much on the Zoom call is my free consultation call. And that's where I go over the questions that they went over in the profile. I ask them more. I ask them, like, what kind of dynamic are you interested in? Do you have any experience? And a lot of times when I talk to people, and I say, are you interested in an open relationship, poly relationship, or a swinger lifestyle relationship? And either like, I don't know, or all the above, or like, what's the difference? So like a quick way that I like to explain like what each of them are is that open relationship is when you do things separately. Typically, it's when you might
Prior,
have hall passes.
prioritizing freedom
Oh
of
yeah,
relationship
yes,
and agency. So
yes. It's with an emphasis on personal freedom. It might be separate dates. Another one is poly, which is having multiple loving, intimate relationships. So that might be having a wife and a girlfriend, or a
fe
wife having a husband and a
yeah,
boyfriend.
feelings of intimacy that feelings of love. You're trying to create multiple loving relationships. So
Yes.
Yep.
And then
I
the
want to go
swinging
back.
lifestyle is,
yeah.
I want to go back a little bit. You guys froze. So,
oh
Oh
yeah.
sorry.
no.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll
It's
cut
all
that
good.
part out.
Which
But
which
yeah,
part
go
did
back. It ended with after you reach out to the individual who has requested to be a part of your database. So
Okay,
sorry to
so
make you
just
go
Okay.
on.
it's yeah. So
Okay.
oh,
So
and we need to make sure that it's date DATE a base.
she's
So
gonna put the links
I'm
in
just
there.
kidding.
Oh, that's I
Date
like
a
that. I like
base.
that's a play on words. Yeah,
Yeah, she made me change it on the website, so it's date a base now. So
Date a
I
that's
just wanted to
base.
throw
awesome.
that in there.
Yeah.
um, they join my dating database, and I have a Zoom call with them, and that's where I ask them more questions about themselves. I ask them about their dating history, and then I ask them what kind of relationship dynamic that they're interested in under the ethical non-monogamous term. And usually they get confused about the differences between open relationship, a poly relationship, or a swinger lifestyle relationship. So an open relationship has a emphasis on personal freedom, so that typically means doing things separately. So it could be hall passes, it could be separate dates, and or open to any opportunities that kind of come your way and figuring out like a way you want to be communicated like that. Poly is
Multiple loving relationships. You're looking for intimacy and feelings. All the feelings and emotions are is polyamory. So
yeah, so you might have
Okay.
I might have a husband and a boyfriend or vice versa.
mhm.
And that's when you have like long-term goals, all that kind of stuff. And then swinger lifestyle or the swinger lifestyle is when you doing this for sexual experiences and gratification. It's pretty much just like having for fun. You are mainly for the most part like emotionally monogamous,
Yeah.
but physically non-monogamous. So that's why you have a lot of people involved in
And that's not to say you can't have friends and things of that nature um, as a swinger, right? Like we
yeah,
definitely have a lot of friends that are in
we
the
have lots of
lifestyle,
friends.
but the main focus is on um, sex, not emotions.
Yeah, I'd say sex and friendships for the swingers,
Yeah,
emotions for poly, and then just personal freedom for those who in open
yeah, and
relationships.
emotions and other things can be with
And
poly
you can
as well,
also be
right?
all
Like
the above as well.
and we're generalizing all of these, right? Like there are
Yeah.
so many nuances to each one of these broad categories, right? Like poly is you could write a book like this thick and
Just
you
the
still wouldn't
terminology
cover
alone.
the
Yeah.
terminology,
Okay.
right? So
So I'm on the Zoom call with this potential client, and then if they're interested in moving forward, I offer different packages like a paper match or a 6 month membership, and that's pretty much where I get their photos ready, I get their profile ready, and then essentially I'm executive recruiting for their love life. So I'm networking, I'm going to events, I'm talking to people online, in person, because I really well I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself because before I start looking I meet them in person. I talk to them again for like an hour or two, really get to know them, who I think would be a really good match with them. What do they want to do with this partner? What are the long term goals? That kind of stuff. And then I find the person, and then if there's mutual agreement based on profiles that I share, then we plan a date, and I don't exchange contacts unless they both mutually agree that they'd like to move forward. So they don't meet, they don't talk until they're meeting in person on that date, and then they take it away from there.
So, is this the service that you provide? Is it anywhere in the United States, or is it specific to Chicago?
it could be anywhere in the United States, but it's mostly metro areas in the United States.
Yeah,
Oh, God, yeah,
major
yeah. Okay.
metropolitan areas,
Yeah.
but
It's
mainly
not like
Chicago.
yeah,
But yes,
Yeah,
we
Chicago's a lot easier as we can go meet people in person, right, and do a lot of things. I
sure.
mean, we do take trips out to New
travel a
York
lot. Yeah,
quite often and California, like Southern California, quite often. So
in
yeah,
Arizona.
yeah, Arizona as well.
Yeah, so it
Yeah,
just depends
Florida.
on the area. If there is a community there that I can tap into, then I'm able to work with clients that way.
Where would you say you have the highest concentration of clients and folks that are in your database?
So Chicago, New York City, Phoenix, Arizona,
Mhm.
and then a lot in Texas actually,
Oh yeah, Texas.
and
Interesting.
Miami, Florida, and um, California, like LA or San Diego area, or pretty much all of California, I'd say. San Fran,
Yeah.
LA, or San Diego.
Oh yeah, so that's
So
pretty. Yeah,
all
you're right. Like it's all the
of
densely populated
yeah,
areas, which kind
yeah,
of
Oh yeah,
makes
and Tucson,
sense.
Arizona, I guess too.
yeah. Nothing in the far northwest just yet, but yeah,
Yeah, that's
in time.
interesting. I wonder. I'd love to share you guys' information to the folks out here because again, it's like a
Yes,
whole
please. I
entire
love
thing.
connecting and networking with anyone in these kind of relationships.
Yeah, we do a lot of networking. Right? This
Big
one
community
of the,
builder.
the main things, obviously, that helps her with her business is finding people, right? And like the only way we can find people, I mean, there's a lot of ways, but the best way is to network, go to events,
Collaboration.
and meet people in
Hmm.
person. Say, hey, actually, I think you'd be a great fit for this. So,
Yeah, it's they operate like a special warfare team out here because like the like that population that's out here, because it's a very conservative neighborhood, but
Yeah.
like they have these like covert ops. They meet up like on just like a secret society, but people know them as like
Yeah,
this
it is
upside
very,
down
it's
pineapple.
still not,
They leave an envelope in your mailbox. You have to
Yeah.
decode it with the special decoder
yeah.
ring, and you get.
No, there's still a lot of stigma, obviously, around open relationships, and that's what we're kind of working towards, like normalizing non-monogamy. And there's also like legalities kind of happening in place through the Open Love organization, who are helping poly families and
Yeah,
non-monogamous families have legal protections.
but yeah, it's still definitely a concern. I understand their secret operations, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
some people. I mean, some people just.
it'd be like
I'll
that.
say non-monogamy is not for everybody, right? And you have to be able to one be mature and communicate your feelings and your wants and your needs, and a lot of people can't do that, right? So
hmm And it's
Yeah.
also illegal in the military. You
oh
can't be
yeah, that
non-monogamous while in the military, so we had to keep
Right.
that
if
part
you're
of our life private.
married, we should
Yeah.
If you're
caveat
married,
that.
yeah, there's that
Yeah,
whole, yeah, gosh. Yeah,
adultery thing.
I mean, like, I don't know. I don't care. Like, I don't care what anybody does as long as they're happy and everybody's cool with it. Like,
Yeah,
so I think it's interesting that there's a lot of emphasis. So I kind of want to get into a little bit of the stereotypes. So what are some of the things that
sure.
you've heard that are just absolutely not true? I want to give you an opportunity to debunk some stuff.
Oh man, what?
I mean,
Oh,
Um.
that we're
pretty
cheating on
broad.
each other?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a great one. We're cheating on each other.
Yeah, it's glorified cheating
Neither one of us are good enough in bed
for each
for
other.
each other. What else is the
Um,
some funny ones? We have
well, that
a ton of
swingers are
STDs.
seedy. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, full of STDs. That we're seedy and we're gross and we're not safe about anything.
Oh
Um,
man, I'm sure there. I don't that just off the top of our head, that's probably
yeah, those
a
are like
fair
the
amount.
common misconceptions of those who are in the swinger relationship. Or like you're just unhappy in your
Yeah, that
relationship.
you're unhappy at first, but
Sounds like you'd be really happy in your relationship
yeah, I don't know
if
how
Yeah,
both
but
the
no,
how they'd
dudes are
you're
be
gone.
unhappy, but whatever.
I'm like, all
no, yeah.
right.
So those are definitely like and then we also get a lot of backlash sometimes from those who are really religious and really
Oh yeah, that.
conservative. They're like, I don't even want you talking to my mom if you think humans are terrible at being non-monogamous. I've heard before. So stuff like that. When people can't wrap their head
Yeah.
around something and they want to give their 2 cents of what someone else is doing with their life. Yeah, the internet can be the
A
wild
wild
wild west
place.
sometimes out there. But I have not
Yeah.
gotten into any
Knock on
altercations
wood.
or arguments or anything like that in person, no
Yeah.
matter where I've gone, because I go to veteran networking events and I go to normal networking events and I bring up this conversation everywhere and everyone's either into it or they're not,
Yeah.
they're intrigued or they might even share that they're a part of it. I love informing people and a lot of matchmakers are unfamiliar with non-monogamy, so then I'm educating them and I'm sharing sharing stories with them and they're like, I can't believe you can just do that and you're married. I'm like, yeah, it's amazing. It's a very liberating relationship
Yeah.
dynamic to be in. I think everyone should
Yeah.
do it or at the very least have a conversation about it and open up that communication.
Yeah, I wonder how many relationships could be saved if it was just simply a conversation of wanting to explore. I
That's
just,
what I say all the time. That's
yeah,
what Ryan was saying earlier is like unethical non-monogamy happens all the time. So imagine
yeah,
having that conversation and then given the opportunity to opt in or opt out of what it is that you want to do. So, if a girl's like, well, I don't want you hooking up with other people, like he's like, okay, I understand, but this is what I want for myself. So do you want to stay together or not? Without the heartbreak and without the fights and without the
yeah,
deceit, like
and the
just a
costly
conversation,
divorce and like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any
yeah.
interesting stereotypes?
So yeah, what have you been
Oh
gathering?
gosh.
Love to
Okay,
hear.
so I was doing some research on like the whole background of this, and then you go down like the Google deep dive, right? Like you're in the rabbit hole at that point.
Hmm.
So I started off by looking up research regarding non-monogamy across the species. So there's like this
Okay.
historical context of like really strict monogamy being very recent and very much so
Yeah.
to the United States. It's never
Hmm.
really been a thing for us to be like it's for us to be monogamous. It's a very
Yeah.
new occurrence, and there's like a theory that it's because of legal aspects and tax collection and sharing of property, especially in communal
Hmm.
states. So I was like, oh,
Yep.
cool, okay. Uncle Sam is involved.
Taxes.
But
Yeah. Of
yeah,
of
taxes, right?
course.
That's why they just can't track your stuff. So if God forbid something happens to you and your assets needed to be divided, if you have three
Mhm.
wives, it's like a little bit more difficult for the government to track that. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense, right? It all boils down to taxes somewhere at some point.
Yep.
But
Yep. Yep.
some of the deep dive Reddit posts I went on, like,
Oh, you're in Reddit. Oh no.
yeah, that's where it takes the turn, right?
I know. Yeah. Right.
It started off with like the "Am I the asshole?" posts,
Oh
and
yeah.
like a lot of people have asked, like, "Am I the asshole?" Like, I approached my wife about possibly pursuing like polygamy or some other kind of like freedom aspect of their relationship,
Mhm.
and the
Well,
comments
hold
were
on.
so, yeah.
I
So
was like, no,
polygamy
not polygamy.
is illegal. Polygamy is when you have multiple wives.
Yeah.
And so it's different than
Oh, okay.
polyamory, which a lot of
Oh,
people do
okay.
mix up. But yeah, polygamy is illegal. Polyamory is legal.
Because marriage, anyways.
This
But
was
yeah,
100%
we get.
polygamy, and the
Oh yeah.
comments
Well.
were,
Oh, okay.
Well, that I
yeah.
mean, was he in
So
Utah? I mean,
yeah, polygamy
I
is
mean, yeah.
unethical as well.
So I
Because
guess.
So, well, the
typically in
comments
polygamy,
were like,
mhm.
the comments were split. It was like some people were like, "Dude, do what makes you happy," and the other comments were like, "WTF?" Uh, and there was a
It's
lot
probably
of, yeah,
the word polygamy. Just everybody was like,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So
polyamory is when you are. So polyamory is when you're in that like emotional connection long
yeah, just
term,
think of
right? Is that the correct definition?
multiple
loving
multiple loving
relationships.
relationships.
Yeah, is the easiest way
But
to
not
describe it.
married to multiple people, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, not in
Right.
this country at least. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's some
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
those
Okay.
that are.
because what makes polygamy unethical to people who live ethically is that typically the women, so the man has multiple wives, but the women have to be closed off to only him.
Yeah,
They're not allowed to pursue
Oh,
other
interesting.
connections. They're not allowed to be intimate with
yeah.
other people. They are exclusive to
That
their one
that
husband.
one penis policy. That's it
One
for them.
penis policy. We don't love it. We hate
Oh,
it.
got it. Okay, so that's like the Mormon
And
cults in Utah. Got it.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
another thing too that I'd like to add is that
Yeah.
oftentimes since you're doing your research and anyone who might be listening might then start to research as well, is that you'll see it going back and forth, consensual non-monogamy and ethical non-monogamy.
Mhm.
And when I first saw that, I thought they were the exact same thing, and I thought people were just like using them interchangeably until someone further explained it, and it makes all the sense. So consensually non-monogamous relationships might be closed thruples. It might be consensual in a way where it's like we're agreeing like
It works for them.
it works for them, or like if we have a girlfriend and like but I can't have a boyfriend, that's
Hmm.
still consensually non-monogamous. We had that conversation, I'm agreeing to it,
Mhm.
but from someone from an ethical standpoint will think like, okay, well, if you could have multiple women, why can't she have multiple men? And then that kind of comes down to misogyny or like toxic traits, in my opinion,
Yeah,
where it's
and
like, why can't you
it could be
For
open?
sure.
flipped the other way too, right? Like
Yes,
where
and
a
then
woman can have multiple partners, but the guy
yes,
can't. And
and that's called hot
yeah,
wifing.
and not to
But
say that hot waffing is unethical. It's all about communication and
yeah,
boundaries
I love
and all
these
that. But
terms. I'm learning
yeah,
so
yeah,
much.
there's lots of
Yeah.
like I
terminology,
said,
and so
you can go down a rabbit hole forever
yeah,
for this.
and
But
so ethical non-monogamy comes from an ethical standpoint where it's like make sure that it's it's fair, it's enthusiastic,
mhm.
it's like different standards compared to just being consensually okay with it and then being ethical about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
mean, so all of the actual peer-reviewed research I'm gonna share on the
okay,
post associated with this episode. The
fun.
Reddit I'm not going to because that ship
Oh,
just
come on!
went
You just like,
complete.
but just in case you were curious, here's all
Yeah.
my rabbit
So I did
holes.
read. There was another Reddit post. It was about a guy and his girlfriend had an open relationship, so they're not married.
Mhm.
But he felt like there was a change in their dynamic, and maybe she was getting jealous. And the comments were actually not negative at all. The comments were people who were also in open relationships
Mhm.
that were sharing what they used to set boundaries. And
Yeah.
I was just shocked at like people were sending like SOPs, like standard operating procedures for their
Yeah,
like open
honestly,
relationship.
you'll see that a lot more in like the kink community, like with like doms and subs and things. Like here's
Sure.
the contract, here's our SOPs, right? This is
Yeah.
what we're doing,
Yeah.
and we're going from there. But yeah, I mean, to your point again, like yes, the communication and back and forth agreements of hey, I like this, I didn't like that, you like
Yeah.
this, and you didn't like
Yeah.
that, so let's do that. But yeah, that's very true. I mean, like she said in or I don't know how long ago it was a while ago. Is keep an open mind. Things do change, right?
Yeah.
Like we
Yeah.
thought we were gonna do this. We never thought we were going to play with people again, right? Like, but
Yeah.
that obviously
Yeah.
is not the case.
I mean, yeah, that was
So
like the first thing you said was like keep an open mind. Like,
yeah,
yeah. No,
yeah.
that's
So
I mean, that makes sense. And again, I saw a lot of the stereotypes I found were just more so naive, just not knowing. And
mhm,
I was able to debunk a lot of those myself, especially like with it not being safe and,
mhm,
being dangerous. And I'm like, well, like if you do it safely and if you have a company like yours who can kind of guide
mhm.
that process, I
Hmm.
really like I like when people do stuff for me, right? Especially when it's when it's like I could just pay someone to go and
It's like
do this.
shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like super
Outsourcing their love life.
yeah,
Exactly.
different concept. So I can't imagine how many people out there are like just tired of swiping on Tinder
Oh
or
yeah,
putting like
hear that a lot.
back in the day when I was on dating apps. I haven't been on dating apps in years because they're awful. But there's always that like random like unicorn one that's like
Hmm.
also down to be unicorn. You're like,
Hmm.
okay, like I don't know what
You're
that
like, I don't know what that
means. Like,
means.
yeah, I'm like, but I'm gonna go ahead and
That's
not
funny.
say yes because I feel like I'm setting myself up for failure here. But having someone that gets a comprehensive idea of you, what you're looking for, and then has people that they've already vetted. So is it like I don't mean to say this like this, but this is kind of what I have in my mind. Very visual person is like your baseball card. Like you created your baseball card, and you're like, here's this other person. So if I hired you and you were looking for somebody for me, you would take, let's say, my baseball card or my profile and give it to somebody else and be like, cool or not cool? Like swipe right or left. Is that how it works?
And in a very base form, yeah, kind of. I mean, she
So I
built a
Okay,
guess
whole
there's so much
profile
more
on
that
it,
goes
but
into
specifically,
it. Yeah.
I'll make a profile where I write down their core
the
values,
baseball card.
a profile about them, hobbies,
Right.
interests, like, and the way I make their profile is I emphasize things that are really important to them. So one of my clients is like a huge hobbyist. Like he has tons of hobbies. He's a pilot, he's a scuba diver, he's all this, and he wants someone to do it with him because in his prior
Interesting.
relationships, they were just like they only had one hobby and he tried to get into that hobby, but it didn't pan out. So he wants someone to do it with him. So the profiles are very heavy, like someone who thinks out of the box, who goes out of their comfort zone, who wants to explore the world like at their playground. Like that's kind of like how I lead with it. And so if the women hear about that and they're like, yeah, that sounds great, because why wouldn't it? Then I'm like, okay, well, here's his pictures. And I email them the pictures and the profile
Oh,
once they
right.
agree that
Okay.
they're interested. And then if they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, and then that's when I get their pictures and profile, and then that's when I present it to my client. So I'm presenting to my client. People have already said yes to them, and then I tell them why I think they're a compatible match, and then they can decide to go on
Oh,
a date
that's
from there.
so
And if
much better than I thought. Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
it's a
Yeah.
lot of back and forth for sure.
It's so
Yeah.
much better.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
there's a term called online matchmaking where some companies pretend to be you on the dating apps and they're doing
Oh.
everything for you,
Oh.
planning the dates, and then the person who's actually the profile just goes to the date, and then they take it away from there.
Hmm.
No, I think that's pretty awesome. Especially, I don't know. I always get so worried. I work in the security field. I'm like, this is not who it is. Like, this person lives in their mom's basement. They're like collecting bodies in their freezers. Like,
Yeah.
there's always that. Like, I always wonder about the safety of anybody, men and
Yeah,
women, who are
yeah,
Hmm.
trying to match make on their own. But I feel
yeah,
like that is it's definitely a service, especially if
yeah.
this is kind of what you're interested in. So,
Hmm.
as a part of your profile, are there any other things that you include as it relates to like sexual compatibility? So, like, if I say like I'm looking for this particular partner, or I'm like into this, is that something that you include? I know it's kind of getting like into the
Yes.
weeds, but
Yeah.
yeah,
um,
I mean, it's a
yes.
big part of
So
the service, right? Is matching people compatibly sexually as well.
yeah. Of
So
course, I can't guarantee, like, oh,
yeah,
she needs to have sex with me every day. I'm like,
like
okay, can't guarantee that, but I can
yeah.
ask her if she is,
what's your? Or you have high sex drive, right?
if you have a high sex drive, is that okay? Or like, what's the ideal amount? And like, if that's important to the client, if it's like, it's more like, I want to go to parties with people, or
Mhm.
I want to go to dungeons with people. I want to have
Yeah, and
the roles.
the
Like, I
very
ask those questions
I
ahead
say
of time.
at the very base point of it, it's hey, the client is into, we'll just say, swinging parties, right? Like
Okay,
without
yeah,
that, right? Like the relationships is not going to exist. So we essentially ensure that the
yeah.
potential partner
Is
is
aware.
aware and is like, hey, have you
Also,
been to a play party? Would you be okay with going? Is it something, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
starting there, it doesn't have to be all crazy, right? Like just
Yeah.
like you don't have to match
Yeah.
100%, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a good starting. There has
Yes.
to be some similarity there.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm sure there's
So
some nuance to it. Yeah.
yeah, like there's a client that or a potential client that I'm talking to who has a humiliation kink.
Hmm.
And so I'm, going back and forth with him. But basically, if I were to officially have him as my client, then that's when I would be looking for women who are dominant and who are familiar or okay with a humiliation kink. And that way, when they go on a date, like that part's already vetted because people don't know when to bring this up when they're out in the wild or out on a normal date. It's like, do I bring this up on the second date, third date?
First date,
Yeah.
second sentence. So I'm really
Yeah, in
into
the
Yeah.
humiliation.
profile.
Just
So, yeah, that's the nice thing
Write
about
it
my
on a
matchmaking service
napkin.
is I have all that
right, yeah,
information.
just slide it across the table.
Yeah, I have all that information ahead of time. Anything they want their partner to know before meeting them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and that is like definitely a case by
Yeah.
case basis.
Yeah.
But with them sharing this information to me, I have also like extra layers of protection. Like I do have an NDA, I do have contracts and candidate agreements, and then the whole like
You want,
no exchanging the contacts until you move forward. That's a big one too because you can get information from people's phone numbers and stuff like that. So
you also run background
and
checks and
and
whatnot
background checks. I do background
on
checks as well.
clients. So,
Oh,
On
really?
clients and dates.
hmm,
Yeah,
yep,
That's a big one. Okay.
yeah,
yeah.
very
Um,
thorough.
no,
Thank
that's awesome. So, okay, so here's my
you
next
for
question
all
is
that.
since it's non-monogamy, are you providing multiple matches to each of your clients because of that, or is it how does that
So,
work?
well, yes and no. So think it's still traditional matchmaking where you're
Sure.
providing one match at a time. It just depends on the services they try or purchase. So
Yeah,
she has a paper match, which is one match at a time, and then she has like a 6 month option where you're
where it's
guaranteed
minimum
three matches, right? It could be
with
more
no
than that, but
maximum.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So that way I can show them if I get an abundance of women, then I can show them why I think they're compatible with all these women and they can go on a date with all of them.
yeah, or
But typically I try not to like I do it just like one at a time
mhm.
because if you
Yeah.
have too many options then it's like
Nothing looks good, everything looks good, and
yeah.
that's fine,
So
right?
it's a
But
slower process, but it's like a higher quality process too.
Yeah. I mean, everything that you're saying so far, I'm like, that's I wish all like regardless of what lifestyle you're leading, monogamous or non-monogamous, like
Like
that would be
matchmaking.
great. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
matchmaking, background checks, like
yeah,
that's a
Yeah.
little bit of a peace of mind there, right? So,
yeah.
Exactly. That's definitely a big point of why
yeah.
there's a lot of interest in matchmaking, other than completely outsourcing that time if you're
Yeah.
trying to buy back your time. But the peace of mind that we're
And yeah,
taking extra measures to make sure that they're a good
I
person.
was gonna say too, also, you're asking, do you provide multiple ones? So it's typically one at a time to see, hey, do they want to go on a second date, a third date, right? Like, and go from
Yeah.
there. It's not to say that, if that couple were to stay together, right, long term, they can say, hey, we want another person for our relationship long term, right? Like, you could do that as well. But
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, because
yeah,
But
we
that's not my main
yeah.
one. That one's harder. So
it
right now,
was
it's mainly
Yeah.
just singles
trying
who want
to
a
trying to find
relationship.
two
But
people's preferences and put them all together and find one person. That's even, yeah, it's a
yeah,
lot of work.
I mean, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Just like-minded people that are in and a part of the non-monogamous community that you're matching, who can like go forth and prosper.
Hmm.
So, can you do you have any case studies, something that really puts like a spotlight on what you do? Like any like amazing clients that you've had that I know you guys are new, so it's not like they've been together 10 years, but do you have any case studies that you want to share? Any good ones? I know I'm putting you on the spot with that.
I know. I'm like trying to
hmm.
think who was a good.
Well, there was. I'm trying to think who I'd like to. Um, who do I want to share? Whose story?
It's awesome that you have so many. It's like wow,
I
there's
know,
so many.
I'm just like trying to think
Yeah.
Well,
which
the
one.
the best one, yeah, like around that area.
Yeah. I would say I have a female client, and she just wants to connect with someone. And the way her search is, she's not interested in big swinger parties, but she is bi-curious and she wants to have sexual experiences because she has PTSD. She is a veteran herself, and so she is or open to being with someone who is already partnered or poly, and or someone who is single. So I found her this guy who is polyamorous, but he wants more kids, and they're it was just like it's gonna be a perfect match. Like they're both in the medical field, they're both on the same page with what they want like long term. They're both within driving distance of each other. They both can travel. So that was just like a hit off that first one. And then another one was the client that I mentioned who's a pilot. Like one of his things was like, I don't like going into the city, but I want to be a, suburbanite. And I found him a girl who also doesn't like the city, who has all the same interests as him. So that's like a wonderful hit as well for those two, I'd say.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So, what about distance? Like, what if you have someone in New York who matches really well with someone in LA or
It
Texas?
just it depends, right? Like so generally we'll go off of what the client wants. Like say, hey, I can move nationwide, or like I can go anywhere. It doesn't matter. Like, and then we'll obviously, if he's in New York, we can say things to people in LA or Texas or wherever, right? Like
Yeah.
that works. But if the client is generally like, no, I'm not going to move, then we still could do things in other parts of the country, but it becomes a lot harder. It's like, hey, are you willing to move, right? Like, are you serious?
Willing to relocate for love,
Yeah.
yeah. That's one of the questions I asked in the beginning. Typically, people want someone within driving distance of each other.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, but sometimes they're like, but if you have someone who is just absolutely amazing, like still share them with me and then we'll take it from there. So, but typically if their search is within a certain range, if they're in New York, I'm not, and they want New York, I'm not typically trying to network with those in LA.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes they
Yeah.
pop in. So
No,
I will always
that's
give them the
interesting. Yeah.
opportunity. Like this person would be a match. Like it's just the
Yeah.
distance that's an issue. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I think the whole concept is again very new to me. I
Hmm.
only
Mhm.
know very superficially about this lifestyle, and
Hmm.
doing the deep dive and talking to you and doing the research, I found that there's so much more to it. Just like most types of relationships, there's a lot of
Yeah.
layers to it. So, so I guess my next question is, where do you see your business going? Like, obviously you're doing very well. This is obviously something that has been needed. I know you mentioned that you partner with another company, kind of, who does like the LGBT community. So, do you think that that would be a service that you'd eventually offer? Just if you want to talk about those two things.
Yeah, if we looked really, really far into the future, what would be really cool for Birds of Feather Matchmaking is our brand is like non-traditional relationships, and that can look in a lot of different ways. So if I grew really big and I had other matchmakers under me or recruiters under me, we could even niche down even more. Like we could have a division for BDSM, we could have a division for poly, and we could have a division for the LGBTQ community who is non-monogamous. Like as long as they're like the non-monogamous bit is kind of tied in, we can really just like super niche down and have other matchmakers with that specialization.
Mhm.
Um,
I'd say events as well.
oh
We're
yeah,
doing events a couple times a month. Little dip your toes into this sphere of
yeah, an
of
E&M social club,
relationships, right? Yeah, essentially like an E.N.M social club to just build more awareness and then get
build
the build
community.
community and just make it better for everybody. I think that's probably
Yeah,
the main goal for me is just making this more prominent and more accessible and getting rid of some of the stereotypes, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. So the education piece of it, I think, is
yeah,
anybody
Oh yeah, I definitely
who's
want to tie
interested
a
can be
lot of
educated on
education
it.
pieces into this stuff. Hmm.
yeah.
And then I know you mentioned, and I'm asking this because I do have a lot of military following, and a lot of my military friends who are now law enforcement, a lot of them are single. They are interested in this lifestyle, but like I have two really good guy friends that are gay. So
Hmm.
I'm not too sure if that's something that you guys can do or can help with if they were interested
So
in kind of like joining your database.
yeah, so what we would generally do is you have a talk with them, right? But we generally refer things that aren't in the very specific niche for us out. We just don't have a giant network in the LGBT
Yeah.
community,
Yeah.
right? Like I should walk that back. We're not specialists in gay relationships and lesbian relationships of that nature, right? We're
Sure.
non-monogamous relationships. We'd
Yeah.
probably be better off for us and that potential client to
True.
send them to somebody
With
else.
that being said as well, they can still join my dating database because I
Yeah,
often get bisexuals in my
that
as clients. So maybe they are open to dating men and women and or just alone being a resource to them or being able to connect them with somebody else as, matchmakers were collaborative in that kind of way. So
yeah,
of course I always invite anyone and everyone to join my database. But if
Yep.
they're looking for a little something more hands-on, a little more specialized, then we have better resources for them.
yeah. And matchmakers are
Yeah.
very collaborative in that sense, right? Like you're like, hey, I have this person for you, right? And like in generally, what'll happen, you'll get a commission off of that. So say she sent somebody to like she had a client in Seattle or something, right? Like we don't have
Hmm.
really much presence in Seattle, but she knows a matchmaker in Seattle, and you send them to that matchmaker. If they sign
Hmm.
on, generally she'll get like a little commission off of that, and
Yeah,
everybody
referrals.
Yeah.
everybody gets a better service, and
But it's pretty much
everybody
just
gets
helping the
paid.
client be matched with a better matchmaker for them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's mutually beneficial. Like it's
Hmm.
incentivized to kind of refer them out, but also it's in the best interest of the potential client. I only ask that because
Exactly.
I have I have a lot of gay guy friends, Navy,
Hmm.
right? So I spent a lot of time hanging out with them, and I'm like, I'm always down for whatever. Like, I will go with them to the end of the world if they want. But sometimes I'm like, yo, we are in a sketchy situation right now because you met someone on Grinder. Like, I don't feel safe. Like, there have been so many times my
Yeah,
friends
yeah,
like they'll be like, oh, I matched
yeah.
with somebody on Grinder. I'm like at the club, and they meet somebody at the club, and like, let's go back to their kickback. And I'm like, I don't even. You just
Ooh.
met them, and the picture you saw on Grinder wasn't even of their face. So I'm
Uh,
like,
but they showed their penis. So it was all
Oh my
right.
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. And I'm like, dude.
We love the
But I'm
gays.
always like, I don't want you to get murdered. Like, I'll go with
Yeah.
you. And then
Like
I'm like
just hold
sitting.
Yeah.
here. Look, I'm not gonna go with you, but take this tracker.
Yeah, here's an Apple
I'll
AirTag.
try. I'll keep
Swallow
it on
it.
my phone.
Like,
Yeah,
Swallow the tracker. Put it somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. Only
But
swallowing. I thought. I'm just kidding.
So
I'm like, I was the safest way to find you. But no, there have been so many times that I'm just like sitting at someone's house, like just drink. I remember once we went to this one guy's house, and I'm like only drinking water because I'm like trying to sober up. And this guy like opens up a crock pot and whips out a cow heart. He's like, I just sauteed this for like 6 hours, and I'm like, we need to go because I
Oh
can't tell the
wow.
difference between a cow heart and a human heart, and we need to go. So,
I can't tell the difference. That's great.
but it's like that for me. I'm like, can you imagine the safety and security that? And my friend
Yeah,
is he's a lawyer, so it's like,
yeah,
he's a
yeah.
professional that could afford a service and would benefit from something like this. So I think at least sending them your way to get started would
I would say
be.
some people enjoy the chaos, though. So that just might be his
So it
way
sounds
of.
like they might just need therapy.
They're just.
Yeah, that's why I moved to the suburbs. I'm like, I'm too far away now. Can't save you from here. So
I can't see you.
no, this is awesome though because I think the more I realize how many of my friends and how many people I know kind of fall into this realm, I'm like, wow, it's more people than you think.
A lot.
Yes.
Yes,
Like,
it's a lot more than you would think, and yeah,
And it's just up and coming. It's
yeah.
only gonna get bigger.
And in this
yeah,
economy, you can't be a monogamous.
Yeah, that part too.
yeah.
Need all the
No,
help.
no, this is awesome. I think that there's like a ton of information that is going to be really relevant to a lot of people who are listening, especially because I know I've had conversations with friends, like I said, being kind of like a confidant for some of my friends who vent to me about their relationships, and they've hinted at this, and I'm like, I have no idea. So at least pointing them in a direction. So your events, are they local to Chicago? Do you travel places to do events?
So there are some plans in the works to have events in other places. So we're planning, or when I say we're planning, it's like verbal, like nothing's quite official yet, but there are plans to go to New York City to have an E.N.M social club event where it's just like a social gathering, and we're gonna have a lot of resources for New Yorkers that are non-monogamous and whoever's local there. And then we've been invited to do a speed dating event in Denver and in Austin, Texas, and Tucson, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona,
But yes, right now only
in
Chicago.
Miami, Florida. So all those have been conversations of potentially having events in those areas. So, but yeah, for sure,
Okay.
Chicago's here to stay because we're here. Um, but yes, we're working on expanding.
Yeah, most of my listener base is in New York and LA, but
Oh,
for
Mhm.
the
excellent.
folks that visit the website, we have a lot of traffic to the website, and that's spread out across the United States. So I asked those questions specifically
Mhm.
for them because I have folks in Kansas City. I have folks that come from all over the United States to the website to
Mhm.
read about some of the guests that we
Yeah.
have. But
Well,
no,
if
this
you
is
want like
awesome. Yeah.
resources on like where people should go, that could be like another podcast for another time of like where people should go online, what resorts are out there, what locations, clubs, how
There-
to know.
there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot around the states. So
And
people
I would
travel to do that
I
stuff all the
I
time.
would say also there's probably in any major city there's probably some sort of event for this, right? Like
Yeah.
either like a swingers thing, a poly thing. They're generally called like munches or sloshes, right? Like where you
Mm-hmm.
go to somewhere like a bar, right? As a slosh, you can drink and mingle, just a networking event, and then
Hmm.
but yeah,
Yeah. It takes time to
These,
build community, but
yeah,
they're out there.
yeah. I mean, I'm familiar, so there's a very big BDSM presence. And maybe I'm
Mhm.
thinking it's big
Yeah.
because I had a personal trainer who decided to get into the BDSM world as a dom, and she started working in like this dungeon in LA. And it like threw me off because she's like a bodybuilder and she was like my personal trainer, and then she was like, yeah, I'm not gonna be training here anymore. I'm gonna be a dom at this dungeon. I'm like, what the fuck?
You're like,
She
oh,
was
Yeah.
well, who's gonna
a
give me
Mormon
my
for
workouts?
like, yeah, she was a Mormon. She has like 8
We know
kids.
lots of Mormons.
You'd
Yeah,
be
and then she
surprised at
was
how many
like,
Mormons,
yeah,
yeah,
BDSM, and I was
convert
like,
out of Mormonism, and yeah.
Yeah.
good for you, girl. Like, go do your thing. It sucks because like you're a really good personal trainer, but yeah, and I
Yeah.
think
No,
maybe my
BDSM is
algorithm
more
said,
common than swinging.
oh,
Let's say that again.
interesting.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say like
Well, when I was doing research. Oh, sorry.
no, you're good. There's a lag. Go ahead. You said
Yeah.
when you're doing research.
So yeah, when I was doing research on like what people are looking up, kink slash BDSM was way more looked up compared to swinging
Like a
alone.
search engine, yeah.
Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
I think BDSM is appealing because it's very monogamous. You can just do that with one other partner, and you're not really opening your
Mhm.
relationship to other people. So I think that's why it's easier for people to like digest and be interested in because it's like, oh, I could be submissive, and you just tell me everything and what we're gonna do in this bed, or I tell you what I want, and then you make it happen. Like there's
Mhm.
negotiation and talk, and getting those needs met. But yeah, that's a whole other world,
Yeah.
obviously.
BDSM is a gateway. Is that what that is?
The
It's a
gateway. I don't
gateway.
know about that, but like, it's more
You can go down some really
accessible
fun.
at first, I guess.
It is accessible, yeah,
Yeah.
more than swinging for sure. We learned
But
about restraints at a workshop that we went to before a play party. Who we
oh,
had a fetish model dominatrix or teach the class on accessible bondage, and so we used things like saran wrap and a belt and a tie and
Accessible
band and
bondage.
yeah and
accessible bond. Yeah.
bondage or not bondage bandage tape. So
Yeah.
that was fun
It was funny.
with icebreaker
That's
questions in between each tie. So
That's interesting. I mean, there's a class. That means, yeah. Also, I think the
Yeah.
50 Shades of Grey really ripped the lid off of what a lot of people were
That
already doing. So it
yeah.
kind
That
of, I think
that
it made it
definitely
more
helped.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
No, thank you so much. I wanted you to come onto this podcast, a little different than what I normally do because I was so interested. I'm interested in things that I don't know. And I don't know
yeah,
anything about this, so I enjoyed the learning experience, and I think demystifying some stuff is extremely beneficial. But
oh yeah.
yeah, before we wrap things up, is there anything else you guys want to include? How can folks reach you?
Yeah, I can be reached through my Instagram, E.N.M Matchmaker. I also have another one called Birds of a Feather MM, but I can also be reached through my website at birdsofeathermatchmaking.com. I have an option for Let's Talk, or you can join my database. I'm pretty easy to reach. Also on FetLife, E.N.M Matchmaker. So
Okay.
yeah, those would be the best way to get a hold of me.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll leave links to everything in the video description.